when we think about product market fit, we always think about iterating the product part of the equation. Like you don't have product market fit because you have to change the product. And I feel like for us it was different because what we had to change was the market part of the equation.
Episode of the Restive Perspective, where I speak with female CEOs and we learn about their journeys to get where they are today. Today, I'm really excited to have Ximena Aleman on. And so welcome, Ximena.
Hi, Cameron. Thanks for having me. It's really nice to be here today.
Just to kick it off, why don't you tell us a little bit about Prometeo?
Okay, of course. So Prometeo is a leading B2B fintech infrastructure company. What we provide is a single API that helps our customers to connect to the banking rails in Latin America. Our customers are usually global companies and global financial institutions that need to plug into the banking rails of the region. For this purpose, we help them to seamlessly integrate through a single API that allows them to verify bank account, aggregate balances and movements, and initiate payments across 11 countries in Latin America. We built the largest open banking network in the region, aggregating more than 1,000 financial institutions in these 11 countries.
Very exciting. And what led you to start the company?
Okay, I think that it's... When we started, I have been building fintech solutions in Latin America for the last 10 years of my life. It wasn't intentional at the beginning, like, okay, I will build like this tech-driven company or startup. At the beginning, it was just like iterating over a problem with one of my co-founders. It was a conversation, okay? And I have since I was a kid, I knew that I wanted to have my own company, but I didn't know back then that I wanted to build a fintech startup, of course, like fintech and especially open banking. I always joke that it's not something that comes out of the blue or something that you aspire to do when you're a kid. It's not like I want to be a fireman or a doctor, But for me, it was a very iterative process where I started thinking, okay, what is that I can, like, I want to have my own company. What is that I can build? With whom I want to build it? And over that we just started gathering experience and knowledge, and something that initially was peer-to-peer wallet for peer-to-peer transfers. So that became something really different, which was something like a PFM, similar to Mint. Okay, for micro entrepreneurs in Latin America. And when we understood what was happening with the industry and what was happening with our business model and why that wasn't working as we expected, we understood that our value proposition was basically the interoperability layer that we had built. And that was the competitive advantage that we have with the PFM, and that was the edge. And so we said, okay, why don't we go B2B? And that became Prometeo. And so I think that it's always very important to iterate, and very important to not to put that much pressure on you, like especially at the beginning. For me, it's like you can connect the dots afterwards, but you won't be able to connect the dots from day one, like you have to put the dots first and then connect them. And so I think that at the beginning is just get out there and try to do something, and you will become better, you will gain experience, and you will be able to iterate, and eventually you will get somewhere, perhaps not where you wanted to go at first, but perhaps to even a better place.
So I want to pick up on something you said there and maybe kind of go way back, which was you've known since you were a kid you wanted to be an entrepreneur. How did that show up? Where do you think that came from?
Well, I think that family it's a very important reference, especially when you're a kid. You know what is that you want to do with your life, and usually like family is the first reference. And so my parents, they were professionals, and they were entrepreneurs. You know, and so for me, like the image of a boss was something odd. You know, something that I hadn't like my parents didn't have. You know, like they had their own company, and they have of course the troubles of being their own bosses. You know, and so I think that that was but it was my reference. You know, like going forward, I knew that I didn't want to have like this person telling me what I had to do, but actually like move myself around and figure out what is that I can do, you know. Especially I think that and it was my experience being a young professional woman. uh, the thing about the boss and having a boss is someone that can evaluate your performance, you know, and has to put a number on that performance, you know. And I didn't like that, you know. Especially like I didn't like someone telling me what is it I can achieve, you know. And so yeah, I think that that was the insight.
And but your early career was in journalism. So did you kind of go into that? Like what kind of led to that as the initial path?
Yeah, actually, my early experience was in finance. You know, I studied economics, and like my first 3 years were of working were regarding related to accounting and business administration. I realized that I didn't want to do that. So I started my path in journalism. You know, I went to university, got my degree, and started working as a journalist for I think that 2 or 3 years. Then it was that I became very fond of tech, you know, and what was happening in the tech scene. I interviewed a lot of entrepreneurs, you know, and I became like really amazed with the stories of people building great things, you know, and I think that that was very inspiring for me.
Got it. So you kind of had this early reference where you saw your parents being their own bosses, not with kind of anyone looking over them. Then you heard these stories from other people of kind of, you know, their own entrepreneurial adventures, and that kind of compelled you to go down your own path.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. I think that it's very inspiring when you hear people doing great things, you know, and especially when you can relate to those people, when you think, okay, they are Mark Zuckerberg, you know, or they are Steve Jobs. It's not like that. It's actually people doing things and those things becoming great, you know, and then of course they are great people, you know, but they were great people perhaps before funding the company, you know, before the company becoming great. And I think that there's great people around the world everywhere. And so we all can build amazing stuff.
There was a moment where you were having these inspiring stories, you were kind of building towards what you wanted to do. And then you mentioned you found the right co-founder, you kind of had that idea. Like, where did that go from maybe just like having beers on a Friday night and kind of dreaming about it to like, we're going to do this? Like, tell me, kind of catch me up to that point. What did that look like?
I think that like each component of the startup, each component of the initial team provides its own skills, you know, and that's very Rodrigo like, you know, like he's one of my co-founders, he's also co-CEO, and so he was the one, okay, like how can we build this, you know, like we were as you said it, we were on a summer night having a beer and chatting about this idea in the fintech space that we should build, and he was like, okay, what's the next step? and it was like, okay, we should check with the entrepreneurs department in our university, which is Orto University, was our or university in Montevideo, Orto University. They have an entrepreneurship center where they advise teams, to build their startups. I don't know how that gets done, like, why don't we just go there and ask them? And he was, okay, I will. And he went there. And so he came back like, well, they say that there's this framework, which is the Osterwalder canvas, and we should like start drawing around here. And so, okay, yeah, let's gather on Tuesday. And we gather on Tuesday, and he went back to our advisor at the CE, it's called, and he provided she and Rosana provided feedback, and we iterated on her feedback, and then get out of a building, that's global. And so we started chatting with possible customers, and having like the initial validation, and it was very I think that now I can say that it was fun. It wasn't fun at the beginning, Very fast it changed the 10 years ago from being exciting to being frustrating. And I think that a big part of building your own startup is becoming frustrated about things, and being able to navigate that frustration, and understanding that the world won't work as you want it to work, It's just like the world will work as it works, and you have to match that and see what is that you can provide to that functioning.
Yeah, I feel like if it's frustrating, it means that you've stumbled upon a very big problem. If it's purely fun, there's probably a few other people that have gone down that path too.
Yeah.
And were you working during this time, or were you in university? Like, what was kind of keeping you occupied during the day?
I was working. I was working, and so I would say for 2 years, it was all about working 9-10 hours in our jobs, day-to-day jobs, and then 3 times a week getting together from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., 11 p.m., iterating on things, the business, whatever we could, and then we were able to pay like one of our CTO's salary, we were full bootstrapping the first 3 years of us working together as a team. A little bit more, perhaps 4 years it was full bootstrapping. And actually I always joke that it was kind of ironic that we had like this PFM where we could check on our finances, and everything was going so bad, because we were deploying all our resources into building what was then Abaco, and so that was a very particular time of my journey as an entrepreneur.
And what gave you the conviction to quit your day job and go full time into the business?
Well, that happened a year before launching Prometeo, I think. I think that for me, it was like this feeling of if we want to achieve more, we have to invest more and we have to deploy more resources, which what you have at the beginning is especially time, like that was at least what we could provide to the business, our savings and then our time. And so it was like, okay, now's the time to make this bet.
Tell me about kind of those days after you joined. I mean, you said things you were thinking about pivoting, things weren't fully working. Like, what did that part look like before maybe you started to see some traction, and how did you get to the point where you did start to see the path you were going to go down?
So it was very frustrating back then during that time, because we were building this PFM. It was we were building it from Uruguay to Uruguay. Uruguay is a very small market. It's a very small country between Argentina and Brazil, 3.5 million people. very few financial institutions, very concentrated in terms of market share between four financial institutions, the four biggest banks. And so it's a very conservative market, okay, especially for fintech disruption. And so for me, I would say like this was very formative. It was very frustrating because all I would get were no's, and it was no, 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 one after the other. And at one point, it became very clear for me that Uruguay wasn't the place. Okay, so we won't be able to build this or anything in Uruguay, like anything related to banking interoperability, open APIs, and so this is not the place. But at the same time, we were very bullish about the opportunity that open banking was across the globe. That it was a huge trend in Europe. First UK, then Europe, and we started to notice that this was like an expansion wave across the globe. Right now, there are more than 50 countries that have regulated or approached open banking, and so this is happening. Like the world is moving towards this, and so in 2018, when Mexico launched the fintech law addressing open banking, for us it was like, okay, this is finally coming to Latin America. So this is actually happening in the region. What's happening here? And so we said, okay, why don't we run a quick validation across Latam? Okay, this infrastructure that we are building shouldn't be just Uruguay. We need to create like an aggregation layer that it's big enough to be really compelling, to be really attractive. And so why don't we build this infrastructure across Latin America, And we have had this vision since 2018, beginning of 2018. And so we ran this validation sending emails, offering a banking API connectivity for fintech companies in Latin America. And I can still remember the day we sent those emails and we started getting the answers as soon as we send the email, and yeah, this is very interesting. Why don't we just have this meeting? Yes, we'd love to meet. What is that you are offering? And we signed the first customers in Colombia, and then we took part of an acceleration program in Mexico in 2018. And I would say that was the initial kickoff of Prometeo as we see it right now.
So you basically moved from hearing a bunch of no's to a bunch of yeses, and you realized you were onto something.
For me, this was a big insight, and this is something that I try to share with other entrepreneurs, which is usually when we think about product market fit, we always think about iterating the product part of the equation, like you don't have product market fit because you have to change the product. And I feel like for us it was different because what we had to change was the market part of the equation. We had to move from Uruguay, which is very concentrated, very conservative, very concentrated financial market, to Mexico. Okay, that has other dynamics, but it's more innovative. Yes, and it was ready at least to hear about open banking and what Prometeo could provide.
Very cool. I love that framing. And then tell me about the fundraising side. So you mentioned you were bootstrapped early on. It sounded like you had a number of kind of roadblocks within Uruguay. When did you start to first take on external capital, and what did that process look like?
Initially, it was very hard for us to fundraise. Okay. It's been always, I wouldn't say that it has been easy at any point, like I wouldn't say that it has. But I remember the pre-seed being particularly hard, it was hard because of the market, and it was hard because I was trying to understand all the dynamics, and something that I can capitalize now is the network that I have been able to build. But at the beginning, I didn't have that network, and so I was dependent on 3 or 4 people that I knew that could make intros for me, and then expanding those 3 or 4 connections to 10 to 15 to 20. That was really hard, and it also took, I would say, a lot of, and now I can see it, back then I wasn't thinking about it, but a lot of courage, because sometimes you get people that it's really excited, and sometimes you get feedback which is really hard to process, hard to manage, and people behaving very different ways. And so, yeah, that was hard. And I think that also because of the context, when we started open banking was something, particularly in Latin America, it was viewed as something very edgy, something that wouldn't happen in Latin America because the Latam market is concentrated, and financial institutions are very conservative. And so whenever we would approach someone, it was, no, this won't happen in Latin America. And at that time, at the same time, Plaid was acquired by Visa, something that then was reversed, but it was a huge exit. Back then was a huge exit that then it was, the merge didn't happen. But when it was announced, it was a huge exit, validating the value of open banking, the value of the network in the US. And so that made it, all of a sudden, it was a sort of a hot market. And another team that was entering the market from Spain got really well funded, and so we had like this competitor which was really positioned in the market, and that was very difficult for us because all of a sudden the market was there and it was taken, and so it took a lot of iteration and a lot of resilience, to go through that phase, and still being able to raise capital, and for many investors we became the underdogs, like they were betting on us as the underdogs, like the other group that could perhaps capitalize the other team that would capitalize a minor opportunity, but still in a very hot market. And yeah, navigating those times was particularly hard. Yeah.
And having been kind of a student and learning that from scratch, I mean, what sort of things did you learn that you'd give as advice to other early founders trying to fundraise, maybe without networks as well?
There are many things. I think that resilience is something capital. Okay, being ready or being aware that you will receive the no's, and then I would say that you can start a relationship from those no's. Okay, and so many of my current investors said no before saying yes.
Usually it's a not now, we like to say.
Exactly.
And sometimes it's actually true. Yeah.
It's actually true. And that's my experience, when you don't have like the perhaps the credentials that provide confidence, that provide trust, that provide credibility. The only thing that you have is your behavior to provide that credibility, and so for me, especially when I noticed that there were some investors that were particularly interested in the business model, in the opportunity, like for me, it became a thing to the follow up, to reach out again, to tell them again what is that that we were doing, the progress of the business, the new challenges, the new opportunities, how we were thinking about the industry, and having catch-ups, periodic catch-ups. This became, part of my day-to-day job, and then something else is taking intros, I always take intros through link or people call LinkedIn messages, or people writing me to my email directly, and that was for me the way I could expand my network. And the network, it's very important. And so I have been able to raise the pre-seed, the seed, and the Series A because of that network. And there were many, like the investor that Ray that led the first tranche of our seed round came from someone that introed him, and this someone that introed him, he sent me an email and a LinkedIn message, And so yeah, and I think that what you're doing is very interesting. Would love to chat with you and just share impressions about the industry. Brian Hollins, hopefully he will be able to listen to this podcast, and we had a conversation, 20 minutes, yeah, share impressions, blah blah. And so he said, okay, I can intro you with some friends that I have, and yeah, of course, sure. And Parade Ventures pop up. And sometimes this serendipity happens, and just you just have to be there, and and push it a little bit. It's not luck, it's hard work, because you are working, you are creating like this opportunity, and then I think that it happens eventually. Sometimes it takes longer than what you would like or what you would expect, but I think that it happens.
I love that. So it sounds like network was very important for you, and to kind of cultivate that network, you give intros, or you take all intros, you do periodic checkups. Anything else that you did to kind of cultivate, grow, build that network that you think would be helpful for others to know about?
For me, something that became also important was, okay, like I have to speak up. If I want someone to listen, I have to speak up. And so I became perhaps more aware of how important it was for me to have like a voice. And that was like, I don't do social media for Ximena Aleman, and so I don't have, like, I have an Instagram, but I'm a voyeur at Instagram, and the same goes for Twitter and Facebook, but then on LinkedIn I produce content, like I want to be there, I want people to notice me. And the same goes for PR, and for podcast interviews, and for me, this was important, because if someone heard about Prometeo or Ximena Aleman, I wanted them to be able to find me and see that I'm there, what is that I am doing. And the same goes for and applies for Prometeo, like we've been always very aware of the importance of positioning, and to raise our voice as Prometeo, to show what is that we are building, to show the world that we want to build. And yeah, and building that messaging has been, I think, a key part of the company that we've built, but also part of being able to attract the resources that we want to attract.
You got traction in Mexico and Colombia, and things started taking off, and you got funders on. What did you learn in that next phase of the business?
I think that's where I realized that product market fit was about the product and the market, and that was very important. And I think that we learned a lot about open banking, but open banking in Latin America, not what was open banking in the UK, what was open banking in Europe, but actually what was the need of open banking, the use of open banking in Latin America, and what could customers do with this interoperability. Back then, I'm thinking about 2020, 2021, we became aware of one of the most important use cases for Prometeo, which is account verification, which is the one that we launch in the States right now. And so one of our largest customers came to us with this problem, and I need to verify bank accounts, but I want to do this embedded, I want to do this automated, and so I need an API. And I think that with your platform, I might be able to do this. This is something that you would be able to build. And it was, yes, of course, we can, and this was a large financial institution operating in multiple countries of Latin America. And for us, it was like, of course, we will get there. We will build it for you. And we did, and then we became aware that this was a huge need, a huge gap of the infrastructure globally, and that there were many use cases for this bank account verification, KYC, fraud prevention, onboarding. So other companies started asking for the same solution. We started offering our platform for bank account verification. And last year, PSD3 regulated that bank account verification of payee is mandatory in Europe, and so this is becoming something global. And this is a solution that we have had for almost 4 years now.
What's next for Prometeo?
Okay, and so we are very happy about what we've done through this year. We launched our bank account verification solution in the US. We launched our payment product in Mexico, and we're about to do the same in Brazil. And so it's been a very challenging year in terms of product roadmap and launch. I think that next year for us, it's all about scaling the operation in those markets and expanding to new regions. So we are taking a closer look to Europe, and especially trying to improve the extent of our cross-border infrastructure, so more customers plugging from outside LATAM, plugging to LATAM rails through Prometeo.
Cool. And then last question, what advice do you have for women that might be contemplating going into the CEO seat?
Just do it. There are no prior qualifications, and so there will be always something missing. There will be always something that you have to learn, something that's next, and you can do that while being CEO, and so you will learn along the way.
Yeah, well, you're a clear example of that, learning new product, new market, and fundraising all at the same time after doing it for a few years. So you're an example to everyone. Well, it's great to have you on. Thanks for joining today.
Thank you, Cameron. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Thanks for watching the show today. For more information, go to restive.com/blog. Check out the show notes. And if you'd like to see future episodes, subscribe on YouTube. Thanks.